you're an officer, you do whatever you're told to do. And then he proceeded in the days to come to actually, I got my first ever negative write-up as an officer. He said I'd violated Army equal opportunity policy by saying I had a religious conviction. And because I had told him I'm a Christian, let me first stump on that. Because I had told him I was a Christian, he was now going to make me the lead for all transgender policy action items in our directorate.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another podcast with the Bonafide Man, Getting Real with the God. And we're here again with Dr. Chase Spears to go over everything manhood, everything leadership, everything becoming the man God wants you to be. We spent last week talking about his military career and his disappointments and the way the military was going, and and some good things too. So we kind of left it on a I don't say a sour note last week, but we kind of left it on a downward spiral. So I kind of want to go back to Chase just a little bit and say, hey man, what good do you see, and give us a positive spin on things that are happening now with our military, and talk a little bit about the good things you see, and then we'll then I want to quickly segue into why you left the military, and then what you're doing now, and we'll talk a lot about leadership and manhood and things that we're doing.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be back with you, gents. And I try to always be an optimist. You might not always see that in my writing or some of the things that I speak out on, but I refuse to be one of those people who says all is lost. I think, with all due respect to our elders, I think that's something that we need to let the baby boomers keep owning, and we need to move forward and say, hey, that there's always an opportunity to rebuild the gates. I think there's always an opportunity to right the ship. I refuse to be one of those guys who say, because the ship is so far off course, you can't ever get it back. History gives us plenty of indicators that you can get it back. The Roman Empire was absolutely debaucherous, and the progressives of that day no doubt believed that they were the culmination of history. They owned history. Well, then God ended up giving literally a Christian emperor, and the Lord mightily used the Roman Empire in the spread of Christianity. And then we had thousands of years later, the formation of America, which was built around God-honoring ideals. The pagan Roman Empire of Christ's time probably would have never assumed that these thousands of years later, there'd be a whole new superpower on the world scene that was built on the basics of Christianity and the basics of morality. And so in our day and age, we see these institutions and these governments who are so out to lunch. They're so lost, and they're so in our human minds, it seems irredeemable. How can you possibly recover these things? But we have to remember that we serve a God who holds the hearts of the kings in his hands. We serve a God who's bigger than every institution. We serve a God who's bigger than every era, every epoch, every government, every individual. The victory is not ours. Let me be very clear. I'm very much a pre-mill guy. The victory is not ours. We're not going to literally brick and mortar build Christ's kingdom here. Christ will build his kingdom. But he still calls us to be faithful in the time and the places that he has put us, to be faithful to calling people to righteousness, to calling governments to righteousness, to calling institutions to righteousness. And the victory belongs to him. And if he chooses to take it now, or if he chooses not to take it now, to take it in the future, that does not absolve us of our responsibility to stand in our place and time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you go ahead, David.
All that being said, so you see the opportunity, and I know you retired before the election and you got out. Why choose to leave the institution rather than try to change it from the inside?
Boy, that's such a fair question. This is something that we wrestled with. When I first joined the Army, my plan was just to do 1 4-year enlistment. It's like I told you on the last episode, I wanted to be in journalism. And so I enlisted very specifically in public affairs, intending to do 1 4-year term, learn some things, ride out the market a little bit, serve the country, grow up some, and be able to say that I served, and to have that experience of being a soldier, knowing what it is to be one who wears the uniform of the country and moves about under arms on behalf of country. I realized that would be good for me. but I thought I'll do 1 4 year stint. And then I want to move on because I had the dream of wanting to be in news, and I'm not letting that go. And then the Lord redirected our paths. And on my first deployment, my brigade commander sent me down to lunch and made very clear his expectation that I apply for officer candidate school. It was not a recommendation. It was not a request. It was a, you will do this, Chase. Yes, sir. I will do this. And once I commissioned, Lori and I had an agreement that if I reach the 10-year mark, then we will go ahead and continue to 20 because there are certain benefits, frankly, that you get there. It's just a utilitarian feature of how the system works. But really, we wanted to do a 30-year career because I loved being a soldier. I loved being a leader. I loved being a public affairs officer. Now, there were a lot of hard times. There were 3 separate times along the way that I had bosses that were just absolutely so horrible that I thought, this is it. I'm going to get out. And then and a change of command happens. You get a new boss, and that new boss restores your faith in the system. And I would love coming to work again. I would love leading again, and I would stay in. So our plan was to go to 30 years because, again, I enjoyed it. I felt like I could contribute. I felt like I could help to steward and to tend the field well in 2 years to come. And then when I got out of the Army, I'd be in my 50s, and we'd just start looking at, okay, well, how can I serve more in ministry now, without having to worry about finances quite as much. And then the 2020 changed everything. Really started having my first doubts in 2019 because, like I told you in my last episode, I started writing for publication in 2017 and found very quickly that as an Army public affairs officer, you're not expected to have original thoughts. You're expected to say only the things that comport with official Army statements. And I was told, I'm not making this up, I was told on a handful of occasions once I started getting pieces placed that were getting some eyeballs, hey, look, man, when you signed up to be a PAO, you signed up to only say things on behalf of the Army. And that's absolutely absurd. And to give you an example of how absurd it is, if I'm only allowed to say things that are on behalf of the Army, well, could I ever teach a Sunday school class at my church?
Yeah.
When I tell my children happy birthday and they're the best children in the world, do I need to bring a disclaimer that this is not on behalf of the Chief of Staff of the Army? It sounds absurd for me to say that, but you have to answer sometimes absurdity with absurdity.
Yeah.
I never saw that in the regulation. I never signed a piece of paper that said I give up my full rights as an American citizen to serve. And so I continued on. And then in 2019, I started to get a lot of heat, and I started to have a lot of PAOs openly turn against me. And so 2019 was my first indicator. This might not be long term for me as I thought, because I want to be in community, and I'm feeling much less in community now. 2020 was a watershed moment in my career because of the way the military locked down over COVID, how hysterical it got over COVID policy. And here I am as a spokesman. I'm a military spokesman. And I frequently say, God calls Christians to serve in all environments. Daniel served in the courts of Nebuchadnezzar, and you can serve faithfully as a Christian in bad places. But I haven't yet found in scripture where you are absolved of being a spokesman and the public apologist for Nero. And
Yeah.
I saw that the military was expecting my colleagues to say things that were patently untrue, to say things that we knew were untrue, but that's what the White House wanted said. And I was really blessed at that point in time. The Lord had put me in a position where I was actually training people rather than being in an active spokesman role. But I'm talking to colleagues of mine across the force who also know the truth, and they're like, Chase, like, I bet they're making me say this. And I said, well, they're not. You have agency, you have choice. And they say, well, yes, but if I don't say it, I'll get fired. And I'm like, that's correct. I don't want to get fired. Well, you do you. I'm going to have to be able to look myself in the mirror. And I just realized then I'm an institution that will harbor a lie openly, brazenly, proudly, unapologetically. And this is why the whole tune of wokeness is really turning up, and we're being expected to say diversity is our greatest strength, and we're being expected to say that transgenderism increases our readiness and lethality. So 2020 was the decision point that I decided it's 20 and done. I think I can hold it together. I think I can keep my morality intact as a Christian that long, but there were certain red lines I knew I would not cross. And then in 2021, I had the first opportunity to put that into practice. And that was when I was working at the Combined Arms Center in an operations job in the public affairs directorate there, a job that I did not want. It's the first time in my career I had no say in a role that I was pulled into. It was patently the most miserable experience of my military career, and I'm convinced it was designed to be that way because of how they pulled me in and who I am. And I remember seeing email traffic coming down from our operations section. We call that the G3. And it's really your operations. And it was traffic about transgender policy and how we were going to begin doing the staffing of those documents at our local level. And I knew because this was being sent to me over an email, I knew I'd been around a while and I realized we're a matter of weeks, maybe months, but probably weeks away from me getting a formal order to as a public affairs planner to begin taking these documents and writing up all these talking points we're going to use, embracing this stuff and saying how great it is. Of course, this would all be a lie, and this would all flout the most basics ontological truths, and it would absolutely be in rejection to Christian reality, to reality, period, and to Christian faith. And so I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, sir, I want to get ahead of this. I have some clear religious and moral convictions on this, and no one's been giving me an order yet. I'm just seeing the beginnings of the email traffic that I know in a matter of weeks will probably turn into orders. So I'd just like to set up a time to talk to you ahead of time, and let's get ahead of this and figure out where we draw the lines that protect my rights of conscience and how you still get the job done that you're willing to do on this. Let's just talk it out ahead of time and it not be an issue. And then when the orders come down, we've already figured it out. And, you know, this guy's taking that part, that guy's taking that part, and I'm staying out of it or whatever." And he responded to me, "Oh, you're an officer. You do whatever you're told to do." And then he proceeded in the days to come to actually, I got my first ever negative write-up as an officer. He said I'd violated Army equal opportunity policy by saying I had a religious conviction. And because I had told him I'm a Christian, let me foot stomp on that. Because I had told him I was a Christian, he was now going to make me the lead for all transgender policy action items in our directorate.
Gotta be kidding me.
I wish I were. I wish I were. And he put that in, and he was dumb enough to put it in writing. He was dumb enough to put it in writing, which is a slam dunk case of religious discrimination. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went on. I already had some leave plans that I immediately went on, and I don't know what happened. I know when I came back, he never said another word about it to me, and he acted like we were friends and nothing had ever happened. I'm convinced that he probably took that paperwork to the legal section, probably to start the process of figuring out, hey, I'm going to have this fight with this guy. How do I set the stage to be able to punish him? And I suspect they probably said, venture at your own risk because the law is on his side. I suspect. I'll never know. But that was like another reinforcing moment to me. Like, this is an institution that's now hostile to what I believe. And I'm not working in the motor pool anymore. I'm not running administration anymore. I am a spokesman. I can't do this any longer. And so that was a further reinforcing moment for us and for what we believed from 2020. I need to get out in 2023 at the first available opportunity, and we did, and I did it believing in the cause of freedom, believing in the cause of constitutionalism, and I firmly believed, and I still do, that I can serve those causes much more effectively dressed like this than I could in Army green.
So
Yeah.
now you're not just dealing with military issues. Now that you are in civilian life, you deal with cultural issues, and you write for publications like Red State. Is that right? And Gateway
I do.
Pundit and other. I read those. But you are now freed up to state your convictions, your biblical convictions, without fear of reprisal or any such thing like that, pertaining to the wokeness in our culture, pertaining to even some corporate wokeness. I know that you have commented on the Cracker Barrel rebranding. What kind of going through all that you've gone through, and then you come out into civilian life and you see a great place to eat. I mean, we're talking country as country can get. You got your biscuits, your cornbread, you got your turnips, you got all the stuff, and now they want to rebrand it and have a marketing ploy up in New York City doing line dancing with people that don't even know anything about anything like that. And so tell us a little bit about that Cracker Barrel article you wrote.
Thanks for referencing it. The Cracker Barrel thing. I'm not a frequent eater there, but I've eaten there a few times in my life. I remember growing up, long interstate drives and you pass in Cracker Barrel, about every hour you pass one, particularly in the part of the country that I was most frequently driving through. And it's a quintessential Americana brand. And when you see brands like that trying to run away from their heritage, it's what's going on there is the PR, the public relations and marketing agencies and those industries as a whole are extraordinarily left wing. Military public affairs is just like them. Even back when the military was still a reasonably conservative institution, public affairs was still a very left leaning field because creatives tend to be more left leaning. And I don't know why that is. It just is. When you look at performers, and you can't go see a great theater show without knowing you're being surrounded by people who probably hate you if they know what you believe. It's just the way it
Yeah,
is.
you're
And
right.
in PR marketing, it's that same way. These large companies are so desperate to be relevant. Over time, their leadership changes and they bring in these younger CEOs who are completely divorced and disconnected from any of the values that the original organization had. And then they look to the contemporary PR marketing firms out of places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and they look to them to tell them what's our way into the future. Well, these are all progressively minded people. And so in their minds, all the way to the future is through progressing and you leave behind that antiquated, patriarchal, oppressive way that you've been doing things before and you enhance the brand to make it appealable to the people who are the true America now and you lose the heart and soul of the brand. And that goes back to one of our earlier points about why institutions drift left. All organizations inevitably drift left unless and the ones that hold are held firm by people who are like hard at work hanging on to the
Found their
chains.
spine.
Yeah, people who found their spine. Like even one, I don't know if you see it behind me, but well, you can see my K-State diploma behind me, Kansas State University, and I'm deeply grateful to the school. I'm deeply grateful to my faculty. They treated me with utmost respect and kindness. But the school is very, very, very progressive, like most major universities. Well, virtually all major universities in the United States are. It started off as a Methodist school. Georgetown, another school that I've been to, started off as a Catholic school. And to this day, you walk in
Okay.
the classroom and there's still a crucifix on the wall in each room. But the school is absolutely pagan. Why? Because they followed the whims of culture. And so Cracker Barrel, that's what they did, was they followed the whims of culture and they had people who were divorced from the actual brand story, trying to progress the brand. And of course it failed and it was just a catastrophe. Same thing had happened to Bud Light. And I'm not a big beer drinker, but uh, Ray Charles could have seen Bud Light trying to do a deal with Dylan Mulvaney was not going to turn out well. But that's what these
Bizarre,
idiots
man. That
turn
was just
to.
bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious. Go ahead, Dave.
One of the questions I've got is, so you see Cracker Barrel, you see some of these other companies that were founded by conservative families, Southern families, and I mean, I'm a business owner. I own a business and my two sons work for me. My daughter works for me and my wife is involved. My wife and I own the companies. I would make sure as I transition out that we keep our biblical values, we keep but another generation down the road or another generation down the road, if the convictions aren't right, if we don't keep that faith in the family the way it is now, I could see it drifting, and that would just destroy me because we founded the name of my company is Covenant Services based upon my promise to God that I would lead that company to honor Him, and so as my companies would drift, it would drive me insane. So I can imagine they're flipping over in their graves, if they knew what was going on with Cracker Barrel and some of these other ones, but I don't understand how blind you have to be and how unself-aware you have to be to think that a brand that is based upon Southern culture, hominess, that just down home thing would want alcohol in the stores, would want you to take all the country stuff out and make it a streamlined. That's the whole thing. He's going to say, "Man, I know what that is." To pick out the stuff on the walls. I mean, we go there quite often. We got one right down the road from us, and we go there quite often because it's decent food. But whenever they did that, we've said, you know what, we may not go back. When they introduced alcohol, we were like, yeah, that's not right. You know, that's not Cracker Barrel. As a leader, this lady is so far off the base of what her customer base is. And how do you go in there that blinded and that egotistical that you think you know better than your own customers know? That just amazes me.
It's
I
a
don't know if
it's
there's
an
a question in there or not, but
You
it's
got to
an
have contempt
indicator.
for the customer.
You do, you do. Well, that's a mindset that one looks down upon the current customer and thinks you know better, and that by the changes you bring, you can attract what you consider the better customer. And it's also reflective of a mindset that is divorced from any mission behind the business. It's a mindset that is focused purely on how can we squeeze as much profit out of this as possible for stakeholders. And I'm a capitalist. Let me be clear. I mean, I've got savings that are invested, and I use the stock market. But what's the ultimate purpose of business? Well, obviously to make money so that people can support their families, but business should be missional as well. You are, as a business person, you're supposed to also be filling a need, offering a service that enhances someone's life, that enhances someone's existence. I've got an old car here. I'm going to be need to put a transmission in soon for my daughter. I thank God there are places that are focused on doing that because Chase Spears does not know how to replace a transmission. There are a lot of other things I can do to a car. That's not one of them. It's not one I picked up from Dad before he passed on. So, but her mindset is one this lost, completely lost focus on what's the mission here? What's the mission to give people a place where they can come and have an experience where they are surrounded in a culture that they love and have a good meal and feel at home. She's divorced from that. She's just looking at how can we make this a place that's turning tables faster and attracting a wider variety of people so we can make more money by turning our back on those who love us and turning our back on the principles that made us a great brand. And to me, that's why we need more Christians in business. That's why we need more business programs at unapologetically Christian schools. We need to remind young people business is not just about making money, and it is about making money, but it's also
Mhm.
missional. How are you serving people through it? Like whether you're turning a wrench or flipping a pancake, how are you doing that to the glory of God and to the service of others?
You know, Chase, in the Atlanta area, we see Chick-fil-A as the last line of defense. And, sometimes you think, okay, so goes Chick-fil-A, so goes the culture. And their mission statement, I remember this a long time ago. I think Truett Cathy came and spoke at the place I was at. And he referenced their mission statement. It is to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that he is entrusted to us. So, and then also they said to have a positive impact on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. So, you have a corporation like a Chick-fil-A, and it stays in the family generation after generation after generation. And, there is an effect on the American psyche, I think, when you have a trusted brand that goes awry, that goes astray. And it does something, yeah, it unsettles you in a way that kind of, I don't want to say it goes to your foundation or your core, but, there's certain Americana institutions that really define us as a culture in some ways, and I think the ones that want to undermine that, like, once again, I think you go back to, it's gotta be a strategy.
well,
It's Chick-fil-A, I have a lot of admiration for them, but it's also a cautionary tale of you're only ever one generation away from losing it. And Truett Cathy was an amazingly faithful man, a man who I admire tremendously. Dan has come perilously close to some pretty major missteps, and he's made some pretty major missteps, and then he quickly dialed them back. And that's something that I've watched very, very closely over the last few years because my family and I mean, we love Chick-fil-A. It's a brand that we just have a great affinity for. We don't eat there as often as we'd like. 'Cause there isn't one up here in this little city I live in, but when we're on the road, we'll frequently stop and eat there, and we love it because you're not only getting a great meal, you're getting a great experience. They
Yeah, they're
just
good. They're
that
good.
culture goes all through. But I mean, even Dan's made some strategic missteps. He dialed them back. The question remains to be seen. Like when he hands off the torch, what will it be? And other great brands have fallen. I mean, look at McDonald's. I remember when I was a kid, McDonald's, like, you had the playground and you had these colorful buildings, and now architecture is an indicator of values. You drive by a modern McDonald's and the buildings have all the outward looking comforts of a county lockup. It's just these gray boxes sitting there. And I
Well,
think every time, what does that tell me about the values of the brand that they've walked away from? And so,
yeah, I
we have
firmly
go.
no, I firmly believe that Chick-fil-A is a cultural marker, and when Chick-fil-A opens up on Sunday, Jesus is coming back soon.
Yeah.
I think that is
Get
I
those
think that's
nuggets
a
and cover,
cultural,
man. Just go with the nuggets.
yeah. But I truly believe it. Whenever Chick-fil-A opens up, society is gone. We're beyond redeemed. So Jesus is coming back. Uh, But so let me ask you. So you spoke a couple times about bad bosses that you had. Segue into something a little bit different. You talked about the bad bosses that you had. And I know I've had a couple. I had some that if you didn't drink with them, you didn't get promoted. If you didn't toe their line, you didn't move up. And I was never one of those guys who followed the path of least resistance. But a leader, John Maxwell said, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. In the bad bosses that you've had, what is a common denominator that made them a bad boss?
Mm. The thing that stood out to me that was common to all of them was ego.
Hmm.
Ego. Men who had lost sight of the fact that they were stewarding a sacred power as a sacred trust, who thought the power they had was about them. It's my unit. When I was a company commander, and I've got my company commander farewell gift on the wall right across from me. You can't see in the frame, but it's right over there. I went in from day one saying, this isn't my company. I don't own this. I am fully responsible for it, and that's a burden that I carry. Two colonels who I will always be grateful for, Tom Roth and Sean Reed, trusted me to wield that authority. But I told my staff, I said, this is not my company. This isn't your company either. This is the Army's company. It's the American people's company, and we steward it. And it is our job to steward the power and the funds and the authority and the responsibilities given us to the best of our ability, so that we may then hand it to the next group of stewards in good conditions so that they don't miss a beat and they're set for success to steward it well into the future. Whereas every toxic boss I had, they had an attitude of egoistic kind of ownership of anything. That this is mine. I own it. It's my name. It's my power. It's my authority. It's for me to do with what I want. And if you're not on board with what I want, then you're my enemy and you're against me. And that was probably the single most common denominator, and it was very repulsive.
Yeah, I always liken that to a lack of self-awareness of the way you come across and the way people see you. And whenever you have that ego, whenever you have that rigid mindset that it's yours and it's yours to lead the way you want to lead, and there's no other way to do it. I mean, that everyone around you sees it. It's a glaring gap in your leadership skills, but those guys just can't see it because they think that everything ends and begins with them. And I think in all my leadership teaching and all my stuff that I've done with people underneath me is I've always told them, hey, you've got the power to make decisions. You've got the power to think on the fly. If I disagree with it, we'll talk later on, but you'll never be reprimanded for making a decision. You'll never be reprimanded unless it's unethical or you're something of that thing. But I've always given everyone who worked for me, because look, I know what I don't know. And I try to fill the gaps around me with people who know, who are better at what I don't do well, who can make the team better. And I think the bad bosses I've had in my past have always been the guys who either were so disengaged that they didn't care, so they didn't lead at all, or they led from a point of intimidation and ego that was just, it made it hard to do your job. So I think that's been my biggest thing. I'm glad to hear you say ego, because that's been the biggest one of mine, kind of that same thing. So, Marty, what do you think, man?
Well, I think the ego thing with bosses, man, when somebody, instead of seeing what you're doing as a stewardship, you see it as your ownership of it, that, and then everybody becomes your servant. They're there to serve you instead of what's the vision, what's the purpose, why are we doing what we're doing? And when it gets that personal, man, it can get ugly. It can get, you take with pastors, some pastors, you got to view yourself as an under shepherd. You got a responsibility before God. And you're an under shepherd. He's the shepherd. You're the under shepherd. And if people says, well, my church or, my staff, and then it starts getting like, well, you just, let's be easy with that now. You got a responsibility. You're under God and you are, leader. But at the same time, it's a stewardship. And when you're gone, somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And it will be here when you're gone. So you make the best use of your time. And even the parable of the talents, they were given responsibilities and according to what they can handle. And you just
Yeah.
have to understand that there will be an accountability.
Yeah.
I don't know, when you got a boss that just becomes you building their kingdom, that's a difficult situation.
Yeah. It
And
is.
I I think that's why it's so important. I'm gonna make you laugh or cringe here in just a second with what I say. I think it's so important, one, to read history, read old books. I love reading books. I try to take the C.S. Lewis rule of read at least one old book for every new book I read. His recommendation is really read two old books for every one new book you read. Because when you get outside of your own timeline, you open your eyes to the fact that you are not the culmination of history. There were many, many generations before you, and there will be many, many generations after us until the Lord returns. That, and then second thing, walking through graveyards. And it's not something I do a
Yeah.
lot, right? But it reminds you. Helps put things in perspective, especially old graveyards, like some of the ones up in New England that have been there since the 1600s. It helps
Mhm.
put things in perspective. Okay, these here are represented entire lifetimes, and I haven't even had an entire lifetime. I am not, the universe is not revolving around me. I'm just one more person God has put on this planet. He put them in their place in their time. He's put me in my place in my time, and he's going to put other people in their place in their time who are going to come long after I'm gone and never hear of my name. And I think that's, for me, that's humbling, and it puts things back into perspective.
Yeah. I think if we look at legacy as the most important thing, as far as our leadership goes and what we leave behind, we should we should leave footprints. We should leave evidence that we were here, and the ripples that we make should turn into waves. And if we raise our children in the correct way, if we lead an organization the right way, we make soldiers that carry on and continue to fight the battles that we wanted. So I think it's very important that we lead from the right, and we create other warriors, and we create men that go out and continue what we believe and take it. So that kind of segues into finding your spine and some other things you're doing. So how did you come up with the title Finding Your Spine? Because I love that title. And how did it come about? Because I mean, doing a podcast is not an easy thing to do. Marty and I are figuring that out right now. And but the whole ministry part of it, go from military, which is I get a paycheck every week, and here it is, and I go. So how do you go from that to say, you know what, I'm going to start my own ministry? And so walk us through, the timelines and what you did.
Yeah, it's I like the way you teed that up for me, because I often get asked, because we have this American idea of whenever you have the word retired around you, that means you're just playing golf or making sure cable news still works. And so I often get asked, how's retirement? How's retirement? I'm like, look at this face. Does this look like the face of a retiree? I'm working harder than I've ever worked for less money than I've ever earned. And I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast. Finding Your Spine, that's the name of the podcast. And I'm so blessed to do in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, never in Smithville, Missouri. And that term came up out of anger when I was still on active duty in the Army. And I think I referred earlier to some of the conversations I would have with colleagues who would say, "Hey, we like what you're doing and we like what you're writing and we like what you're saying and we completely agree and we want you to keep it up." And I'd say, "Well, come on and join me." "Oh, well, and over time, I went from a place of understanding because it's hard. It's not easy to, "Hey, come on, guys, really? It'd be easier if there were a few other folks out here on the flank," to eventually outright anger of, "Don't tell me you're a warrior, and don't tell me you're a committed Christian, and don't tell me you care about what we hand down to our children if you won't get skin in the game right now. All you are is air and bones, and I don't want to hear it. Find your spine, man up, get in the fight." And so that's where the term came from. And I started using that when I was in the military. And so I'd been out about a year. I started writing a lot more once I came off active duty because suddenly I didn't have to worry about quite as many arrows in my back for it. And I started having people say, "Hey, Chase, you should really podcast. We see we see the themes in your work, and we hear when you speak, you begin this medium." And I was like, "But I don't want a podcast because one is work. You know it's work. Two, when I write something, I'm in complete control. I can clean it up and refine it and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and sound way smarter than I really am by the time I get to the end of it. When you're podcasting, every awkward pause, every filler word, it shows up, and you can't edit all that out, or all you'll have is jump cut after jump cut, and then it's a sloppy podcast. And I don't like the sound of my own voice, frankly. And so I
Yeah.
really did not want a podcast. I felt very comfortable as a writer. I feel very comfortable as a public speaker. I didn't want a podcast, but I
Yeah.
had people continue to say, "You need to podcast, you need to podcast, you need to podcast." And so last fall, I was driving somewhere with my wife. We were south of here on I-70, driving eastbound towards Kansas City, just near the Kansas International Racetrack, for anyone who's familiar with the area. And I said, "Hey, babe, I've got a question for you," because my wife is very wise and she's always been an amazing counselor to me. And I said, I'm noticing a drum beat. This is like a recurring theme. People saying, "I need to podcast, I need to podcast, I need to podcast." I really don't want to, and I've been very Sherman-esque in what my response has been on that. And I'm curious, am I missing an opportunity here out of just being stubborn? What do you think? And she said, "Yeah, I've been wondering why you haven't started one." I was like, "Oh, okay, well." Um, and so I said, "Okay, I'll come up with a concept." So I came up with the concept of finding your spine. This needs to be about courage. This needs to be about calling Christian men and women to take bold stances,
Mhm.
stop talking about it in the shadows, but to actually
Yep.
get into action, to recognize the stewardship mandate did not go away at the ascension of Christ, and to get involved and to use their talents and to use their gifts here and now to the glory of God and the preservation of truth. And I committed that this is late fall. I think it was like October, November last year. And I committed, okay, I'll start studying and learning what I have to do in terms of the tech and all that stuff to maybe do a launch by summer of 2025, late summer 2025. Maybe I'll get a pilot out and then I'll start slow walking it. And eventually I'll learn what I'm doing and I'll have a regular thing going and I'll just do it on my own. Well, come December, the Herzog Foundation, which was building a family of podcasts focused mostly on Christian education, but they were beginning to look for ways to get into the cultural debate as well. And we're familiar with them. We've gone to some of their teacher training events. We've gone to some of the events out there at their headquarters in Smithville, Missouri. And they put out an audition call. They said, "Hey, we're looking for fresh ideas for something to add to our podcast network. And we want people to come out on this night between these times and pitch us something that's unlike anything that we have right now. Because we're looking for something completely out of the ordinary." And so I drove out there. I took the pitch from my head. I spent that afternoon. I actually put it into writing. I drove out there. It was Shark Tank style interview process. I walked into a room. I had 5 minutes in front of a panel of 5 people. And I briefed them. Here is my idea. Here's who I am. Here's why I believe I would do this well. and here's my vision for it, and here are the people I would want to reach. And I walked out of the room thinking there's no way they'll choose me because the building had 16 other really, really wonderful, talented, smart thinkers there as well. And I thought, yeah, stiff competition. There's no way I'm getting this. And then in February, I got an email saying, "Welcome to the network." And so we went live in April, and we've been a weekly show ever since. This week, we're 30 episodes in. I've already recorded the rest of the episodes for this year and out into January. And it's just been a huge blessing. And I bring in people who have been through the fire and who have stood firm. And we tell those stories of, hey, how do you actually take this out of your brain and how do you put it into practice and encourage other people to do it? And it's the most wonderful thing that I do vocationally. I still love writing, I still love advising, but I have more fun with that podcast than anything else I do for work.
That's awesome.
So it was a blessing that people kept forcing you to do.
Yeah.
This morning in our men's call that we have every Friday morning, we talked about pride getting in the way or doubts getting in the way of God's will for you. Talking about Naaman. Now he wouldn't dip into the Jordan because it was dirty. He said, you didn't come to me and meet me. You just sent a messenger to tell me to go dip in a dirty river. So his pride almost kept him from healing. And I think your story there is about I don't like the way I sound. I don't want to talk. I don't want to do that's a lot of work, and I'd rather just write and be, but yet you were submissive and you listened to God and you found a love for something that you don't sound near as bad as you thought you did, do you?
I still cringe hearing my own voice, but I'm getting used to it.
Oh, you're great, man. You're great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let
No,
me
no
ask you
issues there.
something about the okay, we're wanting to reach men, we want to encourage men, and we know a lot of men make some big mistakes. And fortunately for most of us, our biggest mistakes are not on the big screen and they're not known by everybody. But you wrote an article about the Coldplay kiss, and you entitled the article, "We saw an image of biblical Adam on Coldplay's kiss cam." Like David says, explique por favor.
I remember when that happened. I'm sure your viewers are well acquainted with the Coldplay concert, and there was this couple who were dancing, and they get caught on the jumbotron, and it turns out they're an unmarried couple and caught in an affair, and they both turn away in absolute horror from it, and it was just this thing that went on. There was a story that lived for a couple of weeks, and the first time I saw it, admittedly, the crude side of me laughed and thought, "Oh, this is absolutely hilarious," and got busted,
Serves them
and
right.
then and it serves them right, and it did. But then I got to reflecting on it over the next few hours, and I thought, "Oh my goodness!" Like, yes, I laughed about it, and I still laugh at every video that we see in stadiums of people trying to replicate it. I mean, the spoofs on it are hilarious and well done. But I got to thinking, this is really tragic for a few reasons. One, these people's spouses are learning about them having an affair on a national scale. How devastating is that? I
Mm.
mean, just to be their children. Can you imagine? And my mind started thinking through that. And I specialize in crisis communication. I did a lot of that in the military, and so anytime there's a crisis communication thing, like, I'm glued into it. Like, right now, I'm watching very closely how the communication is being handled on this tragic UPS jet crash up in Louisville, and I'll give credit. The NTSB is just handing us a master class in how you handle the communication on that. My hat's off to them. They're doing a marvelous job in such a tragic situation. But the Coldplay kiss, so I got to thinking about, man, this is really bad for their families. What a terrible thing. How their kids must be aching, how their spouses must be aching. And then I got angry as a man because I saw two different actions happen. I see the woman turns around, covers her face and turns around in horror. She doesn't want to be seen. She feels the immediate shame. What does the man do? He ducks out of frame and leaves her there all alone, still inside of the camera, her back to it, knowing that she is probably feeling things that would put most people into a nervous breakdown at that point in time. Where was the man? Where was the man? He was a
Gone.
coward. He was a
Gone.
pathetic, gutless
He
coward.
didn't find
He
her
was
fine.
He had no spine. Well, first off, he's a traitor to his wife, and then he won't even stand up for the woman he's betraying his wife for. He ducks and hides and leaves her. So I saw in that, I saw a man who was doing everything he could to run from the situation, to hide from the situation, and leave everyone else affected feeling the full brunt of it. But he didn't want to feel the brunt of it. He wanted to hide. He wanted to
Yep.
be invisible in the moment. And I thought, man, there's a theological lesson. Where else have I seen that? Adam. I thought right there. That not is that not just like the first sin? Adam takes the bite of the apple, and then when the Lord God comes and says, "What have you done?" He doesn't say, "I've sinned, Lord." He throws it on Eve. "Oh, it's not me. It's her."
It's that woman you gave.
It's that woman you gave me. He hangs Eve out to dry. He drives the proverbial bus over her. And I thought, man,
Yeah.
that's what we saw. That's what we saw. And I'm a creative and I can't help myself. And so I sat down and my reflection turned into an essay. And I thought, I think someone would probably read this. And
Yeah, I
so I'm
thought it was a
glad you
very good
did.
article. Excellent article. Great take on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we wanted to have you back to talk some of these cultural issues and talk about leadership. And is there anything that you would like to say that maybe we have not covered? Anything that, especially like if you could just have a group of men, and those guys, there's some there they're faithful. Some guys are maybe faithful, but in their mind and heart they're very unfaithful. And you have guys that they're all over the spectrum. So what would be something that you would say to men that would about their spine, the condition, you are a spiritual chiropractor or whatever, and you're going to help them get that spine where it needs to be. What would you say to them? You could just sum it all up in one, straight line, little blurb.
I would say God has created you, man, to lead, to boldly lead, to
Yeah.
provide, to protect, to stand against evil in your time, in your place. That is what a man is designed to do. That is what God put us here to do. You have a sacred responsibility to do that, whether it be in your job, in your home, in your church. We are in a land of spiritual warfare, and it's been that way ever since the opening portions of Genesis. That has not changed, and that will not change until Christ establishes his kingdom. But until then, we are called to stand, and we have to get loose of this idea that we're just going to go along and get along. That's not what we're called to do. Men are designed to be risk takers. They're designed to carry heavy burdens. And I believe firmly the parable of the talents warns us that we will not be held blameless if we do not do what God has designed us to do. And it is time that men, Christian men, stand boldly. And that does not necessarily mean that you need to run for office or you need to go be an activist. Some people misconstrue that. No, stand where you are. Now, some do need to run for office. Some do need to get involved in activism. Some do need to show up and make our voices heard in that civic realm. But but we all need to be faithful where we're at, to speak truth boldly where we're at, and
Amen.
to stand against evil. And every man is required to do that. It's what we're designed to do. If you're not doing it, you need to do it. If you're afraid to do it, I understand. Fear is a natural reflex. Plug into other men who are willing to do it. I've got plenty of stories on the Fun of Your Spine podcast. I know you guys are going to have great stories on your podcast as well. Plug into stories of others who are doing it. Get into scripture. Spend time in prayer. You can do this, man. You can. Not only must you, you can. You absolutely can. And as you do it, you'll be able to do it better the next time.
Yeah. And we as Christian men need to step up. We need to step up and bring other men with us. You don't have to recreate the wheel, like you just said. I mean, there are people who are doing it and living it right now who have come through the same thing you're facing. Find those people, find a mentor, find someone who can help you bring yourself up, and of course always lean on God, but find other men. God will put people in your path that will help you do that. So all that being said, so you started a new program, right? A new vein of what you do. Explain to us what that whole ministry is about and how people can get involved with it and reach out to you.
Well, I was very deliberate when I left the army that I didn't want to go into the corporate realm. There are a lot of jobs that it's easy to go and transfer your military talents, and make good money and continue on as a corporate communicator. And I was very deliberate. I didn't want to do that because every organization out there was embracing the same ideologies that I wanted to escape in the military. And I felt very strongly I want to use my talents in a way that glorify God. And so I'm really kind of split across three veins. I set up my own company. Part of it is my podcasting that I do with the Herzog Foundation, and they're amazing. They do all the production on it, make it look way better than I could. Part of it is my writing for Red State and American Mind, and then a part of it is advising other people who want to take stands. And sadly, I find that there are very few people uh, who really want help in that regard. But that's something that I try to serve those who are willing to. And so, I mean, it's a mission-minded business focus that I have, and I decided very deliberately I want to build. I want to be a part of the movement of men who are trying to stand in this time and in this place, and I can do that best independently and finding other people of like mind to do that. So that's my focus right now is telling these stories and trying to encourage leaders and prepare and train leaders to do exactly these kind of things. Uh, Say, hey, good luck. Here's an idea, but to actually help equip them, whether it be through the things that we share on the podcast, whether it be through the things that I pass on in my writing, or whether it be through direct consultation and coaching. And that's my focus, that's my mission, and I'm praying the Lord will use it.
So if
Okay.
someone wants to get you in the coaching realm, how would they go about reaching out to you for personal coaching?
Yeah, thanks. The best way to reach me is chasespears.com. The CHASESPEARS.com. That's my landing place. You can find all my writings there. There's a contact form. You can actually email me directly through that website. You can connect to the podcast. So anything and everything that I'm doing is located there at chasespears.com. And if you also want to reach out to me on social media, I'm on most of the social media platforms. My handle is at Dr. Chase. I just said it that way because that's the one that I could get that was uniform across all of them. Chase Spears was taking on a couple of others. So you can find me there just about all the major social media platforms, and you can message me through there as well. And if you prefer to email, my address is chase@chasespears.com. So in any way, any of those ways, people can reach out.
Great.
I think
That's awesome.
I think you bring a lot to the table. Marty,
Thank you.
I saw him. I mean, this has been very good. You're awesome. Appreciate what you do. We need folks like you standing up in places where you've been able to stand up and where you are standing up right now, and how you're also coaching and leading other people. And man, God bless you for what you're doing, man. You're very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Well,
Chase,
I was going to say it's very kind. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the work that you men are doing to encourage men because we need it.
yeah,
We need it. We've had a culture that's sat men down and pushed them off to the side and called them toxic. We need to remember, no, this is a godly mantle.
yep, I agree. I agree. Chase, I'm hoping that we can do something in the future, put something together. We can do something in person together. So I would love to be able to put our heads together and do something great. But man, I
I would
think this
welcome the
is
opportunity.
yep. I think this has been great, Marty. And, I think this may be one of our best yet. So I think we had a
Yes.
lot of good meat here, and we're going to talk to you about the military side, and I know you worked in the Pentagon as well, didn't you, for a little bit?
I did a short tour in the Pentagon during my time as a Georgetown fellow, and once you see things, you can't unsee them.
And we need to have you back just talk about the Pentagon side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
we
Let's
should.
get the
no, it's
Pentagon.
yeah. So well, Chase,
I
man,
will tell you, I was received there very differently as a civilian recently than I ever was when I was in uniform. Very different.
well, hopefully it's a little bit different now than it was when you were there.
It is.
But
Awesome.
Chase, thank you so much for being on, brother. I pray that God will just bless your endeavors and continue to blessing what you're doing. And if we can ever help you in any way, we'd love to be able to help you out. Marty, you got any closing thoughts?
It's
Let
been
you give
awesome.
us.
It's been awesome.
Yep.
It's been a joy to
All
be
right.
with you, gentlemen. I'm grateful for what you're doing.
Well, thanks for spending time with us, Chase. We appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all. If you want to reach out to Chase to talk about what he does and maybe get some mentoring, maybe get some help from him, Chase at chasespears.com and then chasespears.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's two ways to get to him. And he does answer his email. And if you hit him up on LinkedIn, he will answer you on LinkedIn as well. So all that being said, great content today. And we thank you. Well, thank you, Doc. You did a great job. And thanks for your time. Guys, y'all have a great day. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
See ya.